If you guys enjoy what I do, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps the channel and it's free and easy to do. Welcome to my channel where we cover the lore of video games. We cover all kinds from the mainstream to the indie, so I hope you enjoy your stay, and welcome to the Chronicler of Lore. Before we get started with today's video, I have an announcement to make. After years of telling other people's stories, I finally released one of my own. My novel Eternal Reign is available now in both ebook and paperback format for those of you who are like me and prefer to collect physical media. You can grab a copy right now on Amazon through the link in the description of this video. And now back to our regularly scheduled program. Back at the Rising Stones, Alphinaud gathers up Eorzea's Avengers, also known as the Scions of the Seven Dawn, to get everybody up to speed on the creepy towers that popped up all around the world. The towers were made by a group called the Telophoroi, who plan on recreating the final days, a process that it seems like the towers have already started, and they've been kidnapping members of different beast tribes and using them to summon primals as a part of that plan. To make matters worse, the area around the towers tempers anyone who gets near them, so without figuring out a way to deal with that, there's no hope of saving anyone. We all know there are a few people who are protected from tempering, but that doesn't make them invincible. Arnval's injuries are proof of that. And of course, there's still Garlemald to deal with. Fandanyo and Xenos lead the Telophoroi, and they've thrown Garlemald into total chaos. The civil war that Xenos started did a lot of damage to the capital, but the fighting stopped now from what Thancred and Urianger saw while they were sneaking through the area. The entire place was creepily quiet, and all of the people seemed tempered and were being made to transform the palace into a really big tower, which means whatever's gonna come out of there is gonna be way worse than whatever you've dealt with so far. So you need to figure out a way to fight back before your friends are overrun, and the best place to get started on that is in Sharlayan. It's obvious the forum knows more than they're telling you, and you need to find out what they know. Right on cue, Tataru rushes in with news that Kral has finished getting everything set for your trip. There's a boat in Limsa Lominsa, all prepped and ready to bring you to the land of people with sticks up their butts. All you have to do is say you're working to help restore the students of Baldesion, and they should let you in without a problem. It's going to be an interesting trip, one that the twins are more than ready for. Once everything's loaded, the Scions hop on the ship at the same spot where Thancred robbed Louisoix a very long time ago. Tataru is of course worried about you all, but there are still other Scions who will be there to pick up the slack while you're gone. While some of the other Scions are sleeping, the Warrior of Light gets a very unique visitor. Hydaelyn herself shows up in her physical form to finally talk to you face to face. But after your trip to the First and what you've learned, trusting Hydaelyn's not exactly an easy thing to do since she is a primal. She admits that Zodiark was made to stop the end of the world, and she was made to bind him. But there have been 7 rejoinings, each one restoring more of Zodiark's power while weakening Hydaelyn. She can't even take your mind into the rift to talk to you anymore, but she had to find a way to come and talk to you to give you an important message. The Scions have worked hard to protect the star, and now it's getting to a point where your time and Hydaelyn's will be linked. A battle is coming that will determine the fate of the world and every living thing on it. Once you finally learn what's happening and you're ready to deal with the final threat, Hydaelyn will honor the promise she made in another time and another age. The Warrior of Light of course has no idea what she's talking about, but since your ship has made it to Sharlayan, she leaves, promising to meet you again soon. After all, you are an adventurer, and she doesn't want to stand in the way of you getting to explore a whole new land, especially one as interesting as the twins' homeland. Since they've been exiled, the twins are a little worried, but they aren't alone. They have their new family who will be by their side throughout this long walk until the very end. Sharlayan is a beautiful city that is designed a lot like Idyllshire and Dravania, but they don't just let anyone in. And while most of the Scions have connections to the place that should let them in without any problems, you and Estinian not so much. But while they don't trade with everyone, they're not as strict with travelers as people think. As long as you've submitted the right paperwork, they don't have a problem letting foreigners in. However, they don't particularly like the Scions, so it'll be better to not mention the fact that you're a part of that group. Kral has everything set up for you, so it should go smoothly. And for the most part it does, since the immigration officer recognizes the Archon marks on some of the Scions, and even though the twins are having family problems, they are still citizens, so it's not hard for them to get in. The problem comes with who you might expect. Estinian. The man looks like he's ready to stab someone, and if you've ever been on a flight or a cruise, you know that looking suspicious does not help you. When they ask Estinian what he does for a living, he can't really say it, since saying I kill flying things with a spear for a living would immediately get him thrown out. Fortunately, Kral shows up and claims she hired him for protection while she's out in the wilderness. It works, but barely, and you're all allowed into Sharlayan. Kral had planned on jumping straight into what she's learned, but since it's your first time in the city, you probably want to explore, and the others have a lot of catching up to do with old friends, so instead of getting straight to work, you'll get a bit of free time before you all meet up at the Baldesion Annex. Estinian, of course, goes off on his own, while Kral and G'raha give you a tour of the city. Once your tour is over, you head to the Baldesion Annex, where you meet Ojika Sunjika, the cousin of Ejika, the very annoying Lalafell you met during the Eureka incident. Fortunately, he's not as annoying as his cousin, otherwise your constant trips to the annex would suck. The place was used as a rest stop for the students of Baldesion when they were in the city doing research and stuff, complete with a very nice spot for you to sleep while you're there. The place feels empty since so many of the members of the students were lost with the Isle of Val, but Kral plans on restoring the organization once the Telophoroi have been dealt with, which means that break time will be over once everyone else gets there. The others arrive not long after you get settled in, so it's time to get on to the real reason you're there. Kral sees two paths to getting the information that should help you stop the Telophoroi. The first is going to require you all to figure out what changed in Sharlayan that caused the Forum to start acting more closed off than usual. There are 99 members, which usually guarantees that there will be a lot of different opinions when it comes to foreign policy. Groups like the Bibliotheques want to record history while keeping Sharlayan out of really making it. But they had others like Kral's grandpa Galef and Louis Sois who wanted to be directly involved with world events. So there are always differing opinions, but for some reason the vote to not help Eorzea with the Telophoroi was unanimous, which means something much more important must be happening in the city, and it is mandatory that you find out what that is. The second part of her plan involves a request made directly to the students of Baldesion. The group had started for the primary purpose of studying strange phenomena around the world, whether they come from mysterious relics or ancient ruins or whatever. Unlike most Sharlayans, the students of Baldesion have a lot of contacts overseas with people who also spend their time exploring the unknown. One of those contacts is Nadana. She's an alchemist in Thavnir, and she's the one who asked for help. A tower appeared out in Thavnir, and the satrap, which is the governor of Razatan, ordered the alchemists to figure out how to deal with it. And it's possible that they found something, but they need someone who is shielded by the blessing of light to test their theory. That, of course, means you. Of course, figuring out what's going on in Sharlayan is just as important, so the Warrior of Light will need to be involved in both, which means, as usual, you're going to be extremely busy. The only question is, which mission will you take on first? Kral, Y'shtola, G'raha, Tia, and the twins will be working in the city on the Sharlayan problem, while Thancred, Estinian, and Urianger head to Thavnir. The Warrior of Light decides that it'll be best to head to Thavnir first with Thancred, Urianger, and Estinian, to talk to Nadana and find out exactly what she needed from the students of Baldesion. Estinian's already been out there, so he can just use the Aetheryte to travel, but the rest of you have to get there by a different means. Fortunately, Kral has already gotten the people of the Confluence to help out. Urianger is not all that eager to go to the Confluence since Moonbreeda's parents are both researchers there, and he hasn't seen them since her death. He wanted to, but he just couldn't make himself do it, but regardless he'll still go with you, so you all head out to find Kral's contact, a researcher named Kite. Once you let the woman know that you're friends with Kral and not there to punish her for having late library books, she realizes that you're the test subjects, which doesn't sound all that safe. Because it's not, since you're trying to do something that's not exactly normal. Usually to travel by Aetheryte you have to be attuned to it, otherwise you won't have anything to lock on to and will basically just end up lost in the life stream. In other words, you'd end up like Y'shtola has on multiple occasions. But Kite and the others have come up with a way for people to teleport to places they've never been to before. It's taken years, but they finally made an Aetheryte that doesn't need to be attuned to. Well, while the people using the Aetherites don't have to attune to the ones in the places that they want to go to, the Aetherites themselves have to be attuned to each other so they can work. Fortunately, the test Aetherite has already been attuned to the one in Ydomad, or Port Town in Thavnir. Sharlayan and Razat Han have always had pretty good relations, and the alchemists from the area helped a lot with the invention. But they haven't really been tested, which is where you all come in. Even with Thancred not being able to channel his ether, those Aetherites will still work for him. So the only thing you all have to worry about is your soul starting to deteriorate when you teleport, which is unlikely. Granted, with that being a risk at all, I can see why they don't have many test subjects. None of you are exactly eager to risk that either, but Urianger seems more worried about possibly running into Moonbreeder's parents, but they resigned recently and started working on a very big project that the Forum is leading, one that Kite doesn't know anything about. Since they're not there, it's best that you all get this over with before you realize that it's a bad idea. None of the Scions really want to go through with it, but since Estinian's the only one that can get to Thavnir the old-fashioned way, there's not much choice. Once Kite starts the process, she mentions one side effect that she forgot to tell you about. You're all going to have a very bad case of ether sickness. The good news is the process works. The bad news is the ether sickness drops all three of you. The Warrior of Light, Urianger, and Thancred all end up feeling like they've just woken up from a night of hard partying, minus all of the fun and sometimes embarrassing memories. Estinian figures that maybe getting you all something to drink would help you recover a bit, which is good, except for one thing. Kral gave Thancred a note, warning him not to let Estinian shop alone, because he's really bad with money. The Warrior of Light, being the only one of the trio that can move at all, tries to catch up to Estinian before he does anything stupid, but with the ether sickness making her steps pretty slow, she just makes it in time to stop the Dragoon from paying 20,000 gil for 3 drinks. You take the drinks back to your friends, and they actually do the trick. However, Estinian had wandered off again in the process, and he shows up with his hair tied back by a piece of string that he paid 9,400 gil for. It's normal for people to charge foreigners a higher price, but things seem a bit ridiculous out in Thavnir, especially since Razat Han has always been successful because of his trade. At first, the area was inhabited by the Arcosodara, a more civilized tribe of the Matanga elephant people race. After a while, other races moved to the area, the cultures merged, and the unique Hannish style of creating things was made. Their products started to get a lot of love around the world, likely because of their very skimpy dancer outfits. The fact that their location is on some prime real estate when it comes to ease of access to other nations probably helped out a lot too. The point is, a place known for trade can't have people gouging prices, or people will shop elsewhere. The government would normally keep that in check, but since they don't seem to be doing that, something must be very wrong. The Scions figure that it might be a good idea to learn as much as they can about the area before they go looking for Kral's friend Nadana. You all split up to do the whole detective thing, and it's made pretty clear that things are going poorly for the trading post. There are crates with nearly rotten food sitting around, boats that are way less active than what you'd expect, and merchants who openly talk about how bad sales have been, especially for the people with the biggest organizations like Khazal. The lack of activity has come from one major thing: the appearance of the giant, very creepy tower. Khazal's been trying to keep everything together, but it's hard to do when people won't even show up to collect the things that they order. They had a large shipment prepped and ready for some people from Dalmasca, but because of the civil war in Garlemald, all of the different parts of their domain are in chaos, so the Dalmascans aren't coming, and they don't want to risk their people getting attacked from the monsters from the strange tower. Ydomad isn't exactly well guarded like the city of Razat Han itself. Because of that, all ships have canceled trips to the area. When Khazal sees you and realizes that you aren't a foreign merchant, he tells you to politely go bother someone else. While the man's talking, a shy Arcosodara named Matsia comes in to see him, but since he's busy, the elephant man decides to come back a little later. The Warrior of Light, being who she is, decides to try and get a bit of information out of the newcomer. Matsia is a fisherman from nearby who usually sells his catch to Khazal, but recently he hasn't been able to buy any since trade sucks, and Matsia is not all that good at getting new customers because he's bad at the main thing that all salespeople need: people skills. When he finds out that you're an adventurer, he figures that you know how to deal with people, and he asks you to show him the ropes. Since it's not like you're trying to stop the potential end of the world or anything, you take the time to show Matsia the finer points of getting people to buy stuff that they don't really want, which he's grateful for, but he still needs things to go back to normal. Unfortunately, Khazal shows up and lets him know that for now, he won't be able to buy any of his fish, so Matsia will have to put his new skills to use. He heads off to do just that, and the Warrior of Light meets up with the Scions to talk about what you all already knew, that the tower is ruining the people's lives just by being there. Even worse, people are disappearing a lot, probably being snatched by tempered Garlean soldiers, which means it won't be long before they use their prisoners to summon a primal. The fact that most of the people being taken to Arkasodara means your new friend Matsuya might be in danger since he's heading off all alone, so you all head off in the direction he went, which is the same way you all needed to go anyway to meet Kral's friend. It's a good thing that you follow the man, because you catch up to him while he's being attacked by some Imperial soldiers. He's very happy to see you since getting kidnapped is not fun. He and his people were well aware of the kidnappings, but they can't really move to the city since all they know is fishing and they don't want to give that up. Since Urianger at least hasn't forgotten what you're all actually there for, he asks Matsuya about the monsters that have been coming out of the tower. He doesn't know much since he avoids fighting as much as possible, but from what he's heard, the creatures look like the people of Thavnir's divinities. It's for that reason that the people have started calling the tower Zot, which means House of Divinities, even though the murderous creatures are nothing like the gods of Thavnir are supposed to be. It's pretty much inevitable that you're going to have to fight their gods when you try to bring down the tower, so Urianger wants Matsuya to tell the Scions everything he can about them. When he finds out that you were there to save them all, he feels bad about wasting your time with the fish, but he's not exactly a good storyteller, so he decides to take you to his village Akyali, where his people let you all know who their gods are. They have a lot of gods, but they're broken into two groups, the Minutia, who look like humans and are beings of wisdom, and the Murga, who look like beasts and are gods of strength. Like people, they have different personalities, and in ancient times that caused them to fight. A lot. After a while, the Murga decided to swap heads with the Minutia so they could gain their knowledge, and the Minutia swapped heads with the Murga to get their strength, which led the two groups into a time of peace. I guess they never heard of working out and studying to bulk up and get smart, but I guess their way was easier maybe, even though I can't really see how. Out of all of the Minutia gods, 3 reign supreme. They are 3 sisters, Sendaruva, the goddess of wisdom, Sandaruva, the goddess of wealth, and Mindaruva, the goddess of the crafts. While they are gods of different things, they are always shown together, which should give you a hint of what's to come. The Murga god is seen as the father of all Arkasodara and the god of nature, but there's one other set of divine beings that have a special place in Thavnarian history, one that definitely gets Estinian's attention. Apparently the satrap, or ruler of Razad Han of the past, made a pact with a dragon, and since then it's acted as the guardian of Razad Han, and is said to show up if they ever need help, which means in the near future you may come face to face with yet another dragon. But first you all have to meet up with Kral's friend to find out what she needed the students of Baldesion's help with. After leaving Matsuya, the Scions head over to the Great Work where Kral said they should find Nidana. The sight they see when they first arrive is unsettling to say the least. Alchemists are unconscious on the ground all over the place. They don't seem hurt, but the question is, did they fall asleep in the very odd spots on purpose, or have they been hit by some type of spell? You get your answer pretty fast when a young Zela boy shows up holding a basket. He gives Estinian's spear a hard look before he introduces himself as Varshan, a servant to the satrap who's there to wake the alchemists up. The minute he says that he has some new scales for them, all of the alchemists pop up. It's more than a little weird, but what's even stranger is the fact that the basket is full of dragon scales. Varshan says they are extremely important when it comes to the research that the alchemists are doing, and considering the fact that their research is focused on blocking the tempering effects of the Tower of Zot, that makes what they're doing very important indeed. The chief alchemist started talking before she realized who any of you were, but once you explain that you were sent by Kral, they all get extremely excited. But Estinian wants to know where Varshan got the scales from. The boy promises that they were freely given by a dragon that made a deal with the satrap of Razad Han, which puts Estinian's mind at ease. His talk of dragons causes the alchemist to start examining him, and since Estinian had been infused with dragon blood and is carrying a spear coated in dragon essence, the people want to study him, and they very creepily crowd around him and carry him off to their lab. The only alchemist who doesn't join in the insanity is the giant Arkasodara woman who turns out to be the Nidana that you all were looking for. Her people aren't the only ones working on the tower problem, but all of their tests are compiled at the Great Work, so that's likely where the mission will finally be accomplished. All of the towers temper anyone who gets close to them, which means there's no way to actually deal with them. So the satrap gave orders to the alchemists to make talismans that will protect the soldiers from tempering so they can attack the towers. They haven't succeeded yet, but they're all confident that it can be done. They had been working on ways to counter primal tempering long before the towers had appeared, and using dragon scales had proved pretty effective. The scales are resistant to most outside forces, and the stronger the dragon, the more protection the scales provide. Mixing that natural protection with their alchemy, they figured that they can make something that could block tempering entirely. They've almost gotten ready for their first field test, which is where the Warrior of Light comes in. The test isn't dangerous, at least not for someone protected by the Blessing of Light. Nadana wants to send you in range of the tower with the device, but first she wants to run some tests on you to make sure that your blessing fully shields you from the tower's effects. They know that you can't technically be tempered, but nothing says your protection stops all of the tower's effects. You might avoid tempering and walk away with a third leg, so it's better to be safe than sorry. For this part, Thancred and Urianger aren't really needed, so they go off to see if they can help in any other ways while the Warrior of Light becomes a willing test subject, unlike Estinian. The alchemists have made a device called a Drunken Deepa that will head to random spots and unleash bursts of ether. The people around won't get tempered, but if they don't have any protection, they'll get a really bad case of ether sickness, which the Warrior of Light knows sucks from personal experience. Nadana wants you to get hit 4 times with varying levels of ether to determine just how strong your protection is. Even the most powerful blast of ether doesn't faze the Warrior of Light in the least, which is exactly what Nadana was hoping for. Since she knows that you can handle going near the tower, she can get back to work on the talisman, and for that she needs to get a bit of spirit weed. It's not exactly difficult to get, but since Arkasodara have been getting kidnapped left and right, she wants you to travel with her, which is a reasonable enough request. She was smart to ask for an escort because tempered Garlean soldiers show up and try to snatch her as soon as she's away from the great work. With you standing guard, she gets what she needs and lets you know a bit more about what's been going on while she works. Razadhan has been all but sealed off since the towers appeared, which has messed up trade since the citizens are scared to leave the city. The satrap has been having a hard time dealing with things despite being a capable leader. With this being a nation that the Warrior of Light has never been to before, she wants to know more about this satrap, which causes Nadana to go into an entire history lesson about Thavnir. A very long time ago, the area was inhabited by 2 Matsya tribes, the Gajasura and the Arkasodara. Al-Ra eventually came to the area and joined the Arkasodara in a fight against the Gajasura, forcing them out of Thavnir. Things were fine on the island until the clan of Hura decided that they wanted the place. They invaded, but a direct ancestor of the current satrap helped make peace between the 3 peoples and formed the nation that still exists now. From that day on, a member of that man's family line would hold the title of satrap. He's not a king exactly. The nation is run by the people, but when a dispute pops up, he's the final say on how the problem should be solved. That system has made the nation thrive, and the satrap entrusted the alchemists with the mission of dealing with the towers, so they refuse to fail. They won't have as easy of a time of it as they may think, because Fandaniel is well aware of what they're trying to make, and the Ascian's not all that happy about it. He remembers someone trying to do something similar a long time ago, but it's been so long that he can't really remember the man's name. He would stop the alchemists since if they succeeded it could cause a problem for him, but he's curious to see if they can pull it off with their limited resources. He knows it's a bad idea, but he's a bit nuts so he doesn't really care. When the Warrior of Light and Nadana get back to the great work, she's ready to go and get back to work on the talisman, but Varshan comes up to say that they're running low on Giant's Gall. Since Urianger told the alchemists about the cure for tempering and Estinian shared what he knew about dragons, the new knowledge made the other alchemists come up with some new prototypes. That's a good thing, but it also means that Nadana will have to send you out to get some more of the ore. Since the Warrior of Light is pretty used to doing fetch quests by now, she's fine with going to get it. And since he has an errand to run in the area, Varshan decides to tag along with you. The 2 of you hop on the back of a pair of dodo birds and head off on a path that gives you a very good glimpse of the massive tower that's been the source of so many problems. There's an outpost for the Radiant Host nearby that's there to act as a first line of defense against whatever comes out of the tower, and that's where Varshan needed to go. The satrap had sent him to collect the report from the Radiant Host, and he wanted to thank them for their service. Nabdeen, the leader of the Radiant Host that's stationed at the area, appreciates the satrap's kind words, but he's not all that happy with the man for sending a kid like Varshan out on a potential battlefield. Varshan says the man didn't force him to be out there. He chose to be, so no one should think less of the satrap for it. Either way, since the Radiant Host look at Varshan like a little brother, none of them want to see anything happen to him. After Varshan introduces you and says where you're from, Nabdeen wants to know if the towers have appeared in Eorzea too. Any information you have could prove useful to the host, so the Warrior of Light tells them everything she knows about the Telophoroi and their insane plan to kill everyone, as well as how the towers are sending out monsters all around the world. Thavnir is pretty much dealing with the same situation, so without those protected talismans, no one will be able to make any real progress. It's a good thing that you came, because with trade put on pause, Razad Khan hasn't been able to get much information about the outside world. Varshan has a lot more to talk to the soldiers about, so the Warrior of Light heads off alone to finish the job Nadana asked her to complete. With the Giant's Gall in hand, the Warrior of Light heads back to the Great Work. With that, Nadana has everything that she needs to make the talisman, so all that's left is for you to wait until it's ready. Thancred and the others have done all they can too, so you all have a chance to chat while you wait. While you're all talking, the Warrior of Light sees Fandaniel watching, and she chases him, but he vanishes before she can catch him. Now Thancred's positive that the Ascian knows what you're all working on, but you'll have to worry about that later, because the alchemist starts shouting out some good news. They've done it. They have made a talisman that is strong enough to completely shield someone from corrupted ether. They call them warding scales, and as long as you have one on you, you can't be tempered. Of course, they need to be field tested first, and this is the main reason that Nadana had summoned the Warrior of Light. She would never let her people do something that she wouldn't do, so she's going to test the warding scale by personally going to the Tower of Zot, and she wants you to come with her. Since the warding scales are ready, the Warrior of Light and Nadana hop on a boat and sail for the Tower of Zot, but not before she tells you to put her down if the scales don't keep her from getting tempered. Lucky for her, the scale does its job, keeping the woman safe from the tower's influence, but it wouldn't be a good test if she didn't make sure that they worked closer to the building, so the two of you head right up to the front door. Nadana still doesn't get tempered, which means they finally found a way to keep it from happening. All that's left now is to mass produce the thing so you can have an army of temper-resistant people to attack the towers. Unfortunately, the scale doesn't protect the wielder from direct attacks, and a pair of chains snatch Nadana into the tower. The Warrior of Light follows her and comes face to face with Fandaniel right as he merges the alchemist with the tower. Fandaniel figured that you'd be impressed with his new creation like his old masters would have been, but seeing as how his invention just ate your new friend, the Warrior of Light's not really amused. She also has no idea who Fandaniel's old masters were, but since the Ascian likes to hear the sound of his own voice, he decides to tell you a story. He's not the original Fandaniel, but he did get the soul of the one who was a part of the convocation when the final days hit. He was born a mortal and lived mortal until he was recruited by the Ascians and had memories of his unsundered form restored. But he never actually felt like a part of their group. Just reminding someone of who they used to be wouldn't exactly change much about them, especially if they created a whole new life with new memories and experiences. And that goes double when the person's lived a life as colorful as the one that Fandaniel had. See, the Warrior of Light's not only heard of the old Fandaniel, everyone has. Fandaniel was the Allagan Empire's insane, genius, murdering scientist Amon, the man who replaced people's heads with animals way back during the time of the Allagan Empire's prosperity. The man who resurrected Emperor Zan so he could conquer the world is the very same Ascian who is trying to end it all now. When Zan was on his way to losing his war with Mericidia, Emmett Selk showed up to restore Amon to his seat as Fandaniel so he wouldn't die with the rest of the Allagans. He didn't believe that they would lose, but since geniuses covered their bases in every way that they can, he sent a clone of himself to the Crystal Tower just in case things went wrong. It turns out that Emmett Selk was right, and the Allagan Empire fell, proving that the only thing in life that was guaranteed was death, and everything else was pointless. The Echo showed the Warrior of Light the entire scene, and when it ended, Fandaniel wasn't standing in the same spot anymore, meaning you were standing there like an idiot, wide open if you wanted to draw a mustache on your face or just slit your throat. He wasn't going to do either, probably because Xenos would have killed him if he did, but he does let you know that even though Nadana is a part of the tower, she's not dead. He's using the captives as food for the primals, and that only works as long as they're still breathing. But if you try to yank them out of the tower, they will die, so that means you'll have to figure out a way to free the captives without killing them. Fandaniel leaves you to solve that problem, letting you know that you will see him again, along with your best friend Xenos, who is still looking forward to that rematch. Since there's nothing else that you can do, the Warrior of Light heads back to the Great Work to let everyone know what happened. Hearing that Nadana is trapped but alive goes over better with the alchemist than you might have expected. Her being alive means that the warding scales worked, and that means that they can equip their people with them and save their friend once they figure out how. Varshan says that the Satrap has agreed to give them whatever they need, and he sent a link pearl so they can contact him directly. As for the Scions, since Nadana vouched for them, the Satrap wants to meet with them in Ras-ad-Han to see if you would be willing to work with him on future projects, which means you now have access to the city of Ras-ad-Han itself. For the safety of the people of the city, since the tower had appeared, the people who could come and go were limited, so it's an honor for the Satrap to decide to let you all in. Under normal circumstances, Varshan would have shown you around, but that'll have to wait until after your meeting with the Satrap. His name is Awan, and he makes it a point to let you all know just how grateful he is that you helped the alchemist despite the fact that Nadana got caught. The alchemists want to make more talismans so she can be rescued, but he wants to know what you all think should be done. The Scions are fine with sharing their ideas since they get to do them over a nice meal, but Estinian notices that something's off. Awan tries to pretend like he doesn't know what Estinian's talking about, but since the jig is up, the real Satrap reveals himself. The true leader of Ras-ad-Han had heard about the Scions of the Seventh Dawn, and while they hadn't met with him personally, they've had close encounters with most of his family. He is Vritra, Race Velger and Nidhogg's brother, and he's lived and ruled Ras-ad-Han in secret for a very long time. Vritra had lived in the area that would be Ras-ad-Han long before the city existed, back when the Matanga first came to the island. But they were smart enough not to mess with the dragon. The same happened when the Al-Ra showed up. They had great respect for the dragon, and it lasted for generations until some Hyur showed up and put their entire way of life at risk. A bloody war ravaged the area until Vritra put an end to it. A peace treaty was made, and Ras-ad-Han was formed with Vritra leading it, in secret. Awan and each member of his family line before him acted as the face of Ras-ad-Han to keep people from coming to the nation constantly trying to take Vritra's eyes for his power. The war that would follow would mean death for his people, and even if they won, their peaceful way of life would be over. That's why the people who helped him form the nation were forced to keep the secret. As a way to keep an active hand in the day-to-day going-ons of the city, Vritra put an eye in a body that the alchemist made for him. That body is the boy Varshan, so the dragon had introduced himself to you when you first had met, in a manner of speaking. Estinian had sensed the dragon when he had first met the boy, and now he understands why. Vritra has spells in place that would keep people from sensing his dragon powers, but Estinian being merged with Nidhogg changed the Dragoon in ways that make him very unique, something Vritra sensed in him at their first meeting too. Since neither one of them had attacked the other, it served to prove to the dragon that despite Estinian's very troubled past with Nidhogg, he's not Vritra's enemy, which is why he's okay with working with him, and he does have a request for the Scions. He wants them to take the talismans that the alchemists are making and get rid of the Tower of Zot. The tower isn't built in a way that it can be explored by something Vritra's size, nor can it fit a large army of people, so the group that goes in needs to be small enough to maneuver, but strong enough to get the job done. His elite guard known as the Radiant Host are tough, but since the Scions took down the Primals in Pagothan and Cartano, they have a better track record with this sort of thing, so he wants you all to lead the charge into the tower. And if you agree, you can keep the warding scales when you're done, which will definitely be useful on your other missions. Thancred thinks it's a good idea, but not if only the 4 of you go. This will take all of the main Scions, so he wants to regroup with Alphino and the others before you all invade the tower. Since it will take more time for the warding scales to be done anyway, you have plenty of prep time, which means you need to head back to Sharlayan, which is what you had to do anyway since the others needed the Warrior of Light's help too. And you should have just enough time to complete their tasks before the warding scales are complete and your invasion can begin. Kral has noticed that something's changed in Sharlayan, and she thinks that it's very important to figure out why the Forum is keeping its people from helping with the towers. Unfortunately, none of the Sharlayans are willing to talk, at least not the ones who know anything, so asking questions won't get you anywhere. That's why Kral has decided to start hunting for information in the far more old-fashioned and boring way of going through Sharlayan's archives to see if she could find out anything about the final days. It's a slow process doing that by herself, but she thinks it'll go faster now that she has a few people willing to sift through a few thousand books with her. So she takes the Warrior of Light, the twins, and Grahatia with her to the Numenon to get started with the most difficult and dangerous task the Warrior of Light has ever been on: reading. The Numenon is where the Sharlayans keep one of the biggest collections of books in history. The main building is only just the entrance to the place since it goes very deep underground. To put it into perspective, the Great Google Library could fit inside of the Numenon multiple times without filling the place up, which is great for people who love books, but not so great for people who are looking for specific, potentially world-saving information. Pretty much anyone has access to most of the place, but there are some restricted sections where only Archons can go. Kral has already sent Graha and Ishtola to start searching in those areas, while she has the twins helping her go through some of the books that are open to the public. Since the Warrior of Light's not a citizen at all, she doesn't have access to anything past the first floor. But Crow still thinks there should be some useful information there for you to find on the forum's history, so you head inside and get to work. In the midst of hunting for all of the books on the history of Sharlayan, the Warrior of Light finds the book that Y'shtola uses to stay young forever. The technique is one that most people have actually used once or twice. All you do is just pick an age and stick with it. That's how I've stayed 27 for 8 years. Once the Warrior of Light has learned the basics about Sharlayan's history, she heads outside to meet up with the others. They've all grabbed some books to go through, but from what G'raha saw, there wasn't much of anything on the final days in the Archon section. So it's gonna be a lot of time spent sifting through the other books that they grabbed. Alisaie wishes things were different so she could do the research at her parents' home, but her dad was serious when he said that they weren't welcome there. She did talk to one of her house servants because of course they're rich enough to have plenty, and she was told that her dad said that if the twins did manage to get back into the city, they weren't allowed in the house under any circumstances, which is a bit harsh, but it kinda makes sense since they've been disowned. G'raha hopes that if they find out why the forum is acting the way that they are, it could help put an end to the twins' exile. Alisaie is sure that her family will get its crap together eventually, but she's more curious about whether G'raha visited his family since they've been in the city, if his people even live in the city. He was actually born in Corvos out in Ilsabard, and that's where his people have been since they were brought there as slave labor for the Allagans. A lot of Makote tribes left the area when the freezes of the 5th Calamity hit, but G'raha's ancestors stayed for the sole purpose of making sure that what the Allagans left behind wouldn't fall into the wrong hands. They likely failed since the place was taken over by Gaulians and renamed Locus Amonis. When he was young, an imperial family with the very familiar name of Darnus took over a nearby town, and they were extremely interested in the Allagan tech, so G'raha's tribe started making plans. Since the Allagan Eye had stopped getting passed down to the eldest children of their clan as much as it had been in the old days, to avoid any problems with the Imperials, they abandoned their old traditions and hid all of their Allagan knowledge. Then they gave G'raha to the students of Baldesion who got him registered as a citizen of Sharlayan. So while their story was interesting, G'raha proved that he's one of those guys who when you ask him how his day is going, he tells you a 30-minute story about how he forgot to delete his search history before he let his girlfriend use his laptop, and now he's sleeping on the couch. Fortunately, he and Alisaie decide to dive back into their research before the world ends, and they get to work while the Warrior of Light waits for Krall and Alphino to show up. The pair decided to sift through some papers that the forum members wrote about the different calamities, because it's possible that they found out about the final days while studying the other calamities. It's a good idea, but since Krall didn't see the final days like the rest of you did, she wants you to fill her in on what you saw in Amarat before she gets back to work. After telling her about how the Ancients' creation magic went haywire and caused their fear to manifest into some terrifying ways that included meteors falling out of the sky and really strange monsters trying to eat them, Krall starts to get an idea about how bad it actually was. She just wishes that she had access to some of the Ancients' creation magic to help understand how it all worked. But the closest thing that still exists as far as she knows are the rituals that the Ascians taught to the beast tribes on how to summon primals, and she's not really willing to experiment with that. The only other bit of information that you have for her is that the whole thing started when the Ancients heard a weird sound. None of the Scions heard it since they were in the process of dodging explosions at the time, but the sound apparently covered the entire star by the time everything was said and done, and it didn't end until Zodiark was summoned. Granted, the Scions have no idea how Zodiark stopped the final days, so in other words, they don't know much of anything about what they're dealing with or how the Telophoroi plan on restarting the final days in the first place. But before they can worry about that, they have to deal with the forum, which means it's time to dive into paperwork while you wait for Y'shtola to show up since she's still somewhere in the library. When she finally shows up, she's not feeling all that positive about the books she's found, because just like the books that Urianger read to learn about the different shards, it's unlikely that any books with info on the final days will be left out where just anyone could find them. But Fortunal had seemed pretty confident that the forum would know if the final days were actually happening, which likely means that the only citizens of Sharlayan who know anything about what's coming are the forum members. That doesn't mean that Y'shtola thinks nothing of value will come from going through the books, and she brought enough to give the Warrior of Light something to do too. After reading for a few hours, Alisaie decides that you've earned a break, and she takes you to a place called The Last Stand, which is Sharlayan's only cafe, because apparently they don't waste time on mundane things like competition and business. It's crowded, which gives the two of you the chance to hear how the people feel about what's going on in the world. It's not all that surprising to hear that most of the general public haven't heard all that much about the upcoming end of the world. But when the Warrior of Light mentions it, it does explain to one guy why his friend who's a gleaner has been extra busy lately. The Gleaners are Charlene's version of adventurers, meaning they send them all over the world on fetch quests for everything from rare books to live animals. Lately, they've been extra busy bringing things to Charlene, which would make sense if the Forum thought the world was about to end. They want to preserve all of the knowledge and wildlife that they could. That means talking to one of them would likely be more worthwhile than chatting with regular folks. So after sharing a cup of coffee with Alice and giving her time to get a few things off her chest, she decides to hunt down some Gleaners, which won't be all that hard since she sees a few of them on boats loaded with stuff that she says they're likely taken to a place called Labyrinthos. Charlene has an enormous underground facility where they keep the more lively bits of knowledge that they've gathered from around the world. Up top, they keep their libraries filled with millions of books. Underground, they have a giant nature preserve filled with all types of plants and animals. And not all of them are the cute and cuddly kind. They were always sending things down there when Alice lived in the city. But that's the first time she'd ever seen a shipment so big, which confirms what the Warrior of Light heard. The Forum is using the Gleaners to prep for the end of the world. That means that the information you're looking for will likely be found in Labyrinthos, which means it's time for the Scions to head into the underground research facility and track down a Gleaner who will hopefully be more willing to talk than the rest of the Charlenes have been. Labyrinthos is more than just an underground research facility. The place is an entirely different world, complete with its own artificial sun, which means finding a Gleaner won't be difficult since the place is full of them. Finding one that's willing to help you all get information may be a little harder, since none of them will be all that willing to go against the Forum, if they even know anything about what they're working on in the first place. They must know something because according to the twins, the Gleaners usually work alone, but for some reason they seem to be working in groups now. Which means whatever secret project the Forum has them working on is big, so you all head off to go and talk to them. But oddly enough, something seems to be wrong with Cryle. She shrugs it off since she doesn't know why she's feeling weird, plus there are more important things to worry about than a headache, so she heads off to talk to some Gleaners, so the Warrior of Light does the same. Erenville, the Viera Gleaner that the Warrior of Light goes to talk to, isn't in the mood to chit-chat with somebody who's clearly not a Gleaner, since at that moment he's stuck cleaning up someone's mistake. Someone knocked over a crate of marmots and now the things are running all over the place. Other Gleaners are moving plants from all over Eorzea, while others are moving books. And all of this seemingly random stuff is a part of a special order that some of the Gleaners aren't too happy about, since collecting all of this stuff messed up their normal routine. And they're not just bringing stuff in, they're shipping some stuff out of Labyrinthos too. All of that is highly unusual, which proves to Cryle that the Forum is plotting something big. She wants you to get more specific details about the Gleaners' assignments and about whoever gave them the orders. And since the best way to get in good with someone who works hard for his money is to lighten his workload a bit, the Warrior of Light offers to help Erenville wrangle up his missing marmots. He wants you to stuff them in a sack when you find them, so you head off to start the very not fun job that may or may not get you the information that you need. Between you and Erenville, the marmots don't take all that long to recapture, but he doesn't exactly know what the Forum plans on doing with the things. He does know that the things are only a small part of the creatures that the Gleaners have been sent out to get. He was told to bring back any creatures that were edible and easy to breed, so the things are meant to be a food source eventually. Cryle and the others show up in the middle of your little talk, and she outright tells Erenville the whole reason that your group came to Labyrinthos was because some of the Forum's decisions didn't seem right, and they wanted to find out what they were planning. It's not the best idea to tell somebody who works for an organization that you're spying on that organization, but sometimes you don't have a whole lot of options. Erenville can understand people hunting for information, but he's not exactly a good source. Plus he has more animals to look for, so he heads off. The fact that the Forum is even keeping the Gleaners in the dark about what they're doing says a lot. But since the mission started 4 days after the tower started showing up, it proves that whatever they're doing has something to do with the potential end of the world. Even though they just started the mission, Y'shtola is pretty sure that the Forum couldn't have organized something so major in just a few days, meaning they had to have planned for this long in advance. There's no way to know for sure, so she figures the best way to get more info is to keep exploring Labyrinthos. Cryle figures that heading to the lower levels would be the best way to do that, but before she can finish the thought, the pain that she'd been ignoring nearly drops her. She shrugs it off like it's nothing when it's clearly not, but since there's nothing you can do about it, you all head deeper into Labyrinthos. The next stop is the Archeon, the place where all types of live samples and critters are stored and studied. The place goes deep underground, and that's where you all want to go. While that may be what you want to do, some things have changed. The place was supposed to be open to the public, but they've closed it to anybody who's not a part of the current mission of reorganizing the place, which means you all have to come up with a new way to get to the lower levels. The best way to do things is to find someone who will let you ride down with them as a +1, which means you need to do more work. Ironically enough, you run into Aaronville again, who is trying to catch a bird, so you help him wrangle the thing. Alice can't understand why the Gleaners are rounding up creatures that are already in captivity, but Aaronville does have an answer for that. Sometimes creatures don't need to be studied anymore, or they're just hard to deal with, so they need to be removed. But they can't just be released into the wild anywhere, so the Gleaners are sent out to take them back where they came from. But that's not what he's doing with the bird. He's taking that to the lower level research facility that's forbidden to all but certain researchers. The things that are worked on down there are said to involve everything from forbidden magic to super advanced technology that even the Archons aren't allowed to see. The people who work there don't even get to live in the regular part of Charlian. They're isolated so they can't let any secrets slip. That makes the fact that they asked Aaronville to bring a random hornbill down there very weird. They didn't tell him why they wanted the thing, but he's pretty sure it's not for any advanced research. He thinks they're setting things up so people can move to Mara City or somewhere else to the south. That's even more strange, but considering the fact that everything the Gleaners have been told to get has something to do with plants and animals that are edible, makes the theory that the Forum is planning a mass migration make more sense. It's still only a guess, but it is a good one. Aaronville wishes he could pay you for your help, but he's not exactly rich. However, Istola thinks that him bringing you with him to the lower levels will be payment enough. It's a good idea, but it won't work since he sends the animals down the lift on their own, and he wouldn't be able to pass you off as his helpers when he's not actually having you carry anything. There is another way down if you have the muscle power to do it though. There's a passage that leads to the medial circuit, but it's probably not safe. It's probably not nearly the most dangerous thing the Scions have dealt with, so you all make your way for the path down to the lower level to continue exploring Labyrinthos and finding out just what the Forum is up to. The path deeper into Labyrinthos that Aaronville told the Scions about would have definitely been dangerous to the average person. But the fact that your group has been fighting gods since forever means the trip barely makes any of you break a sweat, despite the fact that you get attacked by no small number of dangerous creatures. The path does lead to the Meteor Circuit, which is the place where all projects dealing with agriculture take place. So Alphino figures that if the theory that Aaronville had about people preparing to leave Charlian was true, then you should all find more signs of the packing up process there. So you all head off to the very first impressive farm that you see to try to find out things. Kral knows the place. It's called Marial Agronomics. The Meteor Circuit of Labyrinthos is where they test out the methods of growing plants from different regions. The Marial Agronomics is where they test the food to see if it's poisonous or just kind of disgusting. There aren't any Gleaners in the area, but the people working on the farm seem to be moving like the same fire's been lit under them that the Gleaners had, which means they might know something about the Forum's plan, so you all head off to do your subtle but not really interrogations. The workers are surprised some unauthorized people made it down there in the first place, but once you tell them that you came through the mine shaft, which is outright admitting to the fact that you're trespassing, the farmers, who should be calling the local authorities, are actually impressed by the fact that you survived the trip and would normally be willing to give you a guided tour through the place that you're not supposed to be in. But since the Forum has them working on some big orders, they don't have time to assist you on your criminal activities. The Forum wants wagon loads of crop samples delivered yesterday, which is making it hard for the farmers to keep up with the demand. What's weird is the orders are for large quantities of seeds that they already have boatloads of information on, and the Forum members aren't telling anyone why. Next to where they have their crates stacked are some very weird flowers that they call heart blooms. The things seem to feed off of the emotions of the people that are around it, and they change color depending on how the people are feeling. No matter how much the Charlians study the things, they can't figure out how the flower does what it does. The plant also lives for a very long time, but new ones don't sprout up all that often, which makes it hard to figure out where the things come from. Every race of people who have found the things call them something completely different, and they have a different story about where they came from, which is very annoying to the Charlians, who seem to want to know everything about everything. But at the moment, they're too busy to focus on the flower. But the fact that even Istola's never heard of the things means that the odds of them figuring out what they are pretty slim. The things really seem to catch Kral's eye, but neither them nor your question and answer session with the farmers has done anything to help you all figure out the Forum's real goal. Alice wishes you could all just interrogate one of the members of the Forum themselves, and since Aaronville is getting his orders straight from someone in the organization, following him around would be the best way to get some information. Granted, this will actually be dangerous, but Istola has a plan to get the Warrior of Light, Alphino, and Alice close enough to eavesdrop. They're interested to hear about the plan, but Kral wasn't even paying attention. She was staring at the plan in a very weird way, but since Aaronville is about to start heading off to do something, there's not much time to waste figuring out what's going on in Kral's mind, so you all head off after the Gleaner. Y'shtola's plan to keep you all hidden is not one any of you would have agreed to if she had asked first, so she doesn't. She just turns the Warrior of Light and the twins into frogs without your permission. Since Corral's been so scatterbrained, she decided not to change the woman since she'd probably just get eaten by something instead of finding information. Granted, as frogs, you all might get eaten too. So while Y'shtola and Chronicler stay in relative safety, you and the twins hop off after the Gleaner. You find him talking to two people who are in the middle of giving him a new assignment. It's another big one apparently, and he's clearly gotten tired of being treated like a slave without any explanation. He wants to know why the Forum has been pushing the Gleaner so hard, and since unhappy workers don't work nearly as well as happy ones, Erenville's handler decides to tell him what he can. A very long time ago, Charlene was given a very big mission, one that required them to do certain things if an event like the final day started. That's why they're pushing the Gleaners, but they can't say more at the moment. But they can say that what they have everyone working on is extremely important. That's enough to keep Erenville on task for now, but the Gleaners won't keep working that hard for so little. The Forum will have to give them more or they might just quit. Erenville's contact understands that, and he heads off to let the Forum know. Once he's gone, Erenville looks straight at the three frogs who he immediately recognizes as some of the Scions. Since he didn't out you, he feels like he's paid his debt to you, and he hopes you got what you needed. For what it's worth, he doesn't think the Forum is planning anything bad for the people, but since he wants to know what's going on too, he doesn't mind letting you snoop around a bit. Before he leaves, the spell ends, and the three of you turn back to normal, which lets Alice ask the Gleaner the one thing that she was really curious about. She wants to know how he recognized you all. The thing is, the man is a professional animal wrangler, so it's not hard for him to notice when one of the things is acting weird. With that new bit of information and a possible new ally, the three of you head back to Y'shtola to see if you all can figure out what super important mission the Charlians were given, and why they think the only way to fulfill it is to leave the rest of Eorzea to burn. After spying on Erenville and learning that the Gleaners barely know more about what's going on than the Scions do, the twins and the Warrior of Light head back to Y'shtola and Chronicler to give them an update so you all can plan your next move. Y'shtola is right where you left her, but Chronicler had still been acting weird, so Y'shtola had told her to go back to the farm and rest. You don't let people who are acting strange wander off alone. They're liable to do something weird or dangerous without supervision, but Y'shtola didn't think about that until after the woman was gone, so you head off to find her. You find her near a patch of the strange flowers, and when you see her, she casts a spell on one that's supposed to keep it alive before she gives it to you to keep. She says that someone wise and powerful said that the flower would be important to you in the future. Chronicler's been hearing voices since you all entered Labyrinthos, and it took her a moment to realize who it was. Hydaelyn was talking to her, similar to the way that she spoke to Minfilia, and since the goddess wants to have a chat with you, Chronicler lets her borrow her body for a little while so you can have a face-to-face conversation. Hydaelyn's been having a hard time interacting with the physical world without help. She can talk to people, but without taking over someone's body, she can't actually do anything anymore. She's been staying in the deepest part of the ethereal sea where all dead souls go. She'd taken Minfilia there after she died on the first, her along with one other person who she thinks still has an important job to do, depending on what you do next. She wants you to keep the flower to help guide you through what's to come, but in typical vague goddess fashion, she won't tell you what you're going to be dealing with, even though she clearly knows. And after that brief, not all that helpful message, she leaves Chronicler's body. While the two of you were having a conversation with the deity, Charlie and security finally did their job and let Fortuno and the Forum know that Chronicler snuck the Scions into the city by claiming that they were part of the students of Baldesion. They know what you all have been doing, and Fortuno shows up himself to have you all detained for sneaking around the city. Alphino points out that none of you actually did any hiding, outside of that little frog incident that he's smart enough to not mention. So technically none of you have broken any laws by exploiting that little loophole in Charlene's immigration policy. The Forum doesn't have a problem with people trying to gather information, but since what the Scions are doing could cause issues with what the Forum is working on, things aren't all that simple, so they won't let you all wander around all willy-nilly. The Forum is gathering, and once they finish, they'll determine whether or not you're allowed to be in the city at all. They've already arrested Grahatia for trying to illegally check out books from the restricted section of their library. Since not every situation can be solved by punching people, you all willingly surrender to wait for the Forum's judgment. The Forum must have built their chambers to give maximum discomfort, because the people who are forced to stand at the center of the room are set in the perfect spot for the entire assembly to look down on them. At least they were nice enough to let you all stand trial together. Even though Graha got caught first, he did manage to learn a few things from his time in the restricted section, and he'll tell you all about it once the Forum has decided your fates. once Fortunato recounts your crimes to the forum and points out just how much influence your organization has with the nations of the world, adding to that the fact that you're all directly tied to the calamity that's currently happening, means letting you run free in the city is just not a good idea. One of the forum members claims that Krau has tarnished the name of the students of Baldessian and her grandfather by helping the Scions sneak in, but she points out that her grandfather would have likely done the same thing in her situation. He would have never abandoned the rest of the world in his time of need and tried to just save the people of Charlian. The fact is, the world is ending, and when the nations asked Charlian for help, they refused, which left everyone confused. And the only way their refusal will make sense is if they explain what this special mission they have is. It turns out G'raha's research had been leading him down a similar path as yours. He had been trying to figure out what caused Charlian's policy to change. They'd always been big on non-intervention and information gathering, but there's something different now. Normally they gathered information to help society, but they've changed things and seem to be collecting knowledge so it won't be lost in the event of some major catastrophe. The biggest change was the rapid growth of Labyrinthos. Loads of money had been spent to grow the place in a way that seems extreme, and these changes started exactly 270 years ago, which was the exact time when the Charlians who had been studying in the hinterland had officially started examining the Ethereal Sea. They must have found something there, and that's what gave them their mission. The forum members aren't denying this, and even if they have to let everyone else die to complete their task, they will. The Scions are just as dedicated to their path, which seems to put them thoroughly at odds with the forum. However, Montaigne, another member of the forum and the leader of the Studium, as well as a good friend of the late Louisoix, doesn't actually think so. While the Scions are trying to fight the world-ending threat, they haven't done anything to try to interrupt what the forum is doing, or to try to cause the people of the city to revolt. Plus, it is kind of the forum's fault that the Scions snuck in, since being secretive about their mission in the middle of something so serious would make anyone want to snoop around a bit and gather information. Since he did make some valid points, the forum decides to stop the Scions from doing any more digging into their business, but they won't banish them from the city for now. While you all get to stay, that does put the brakes on your investigation, so you all leave the courtroom to come up with a new and better way to break the forum's policies, and hopefully not get caught again. Since the Charlians are fully aware of the Scion shenanigans in the city, there's not really all that much more snooping around that they can do. Alice does feel a little bit miffed about the fact that whatever her dad's working on seems to be even more important to him than his own family, but that sentiment isn't shared by her mother, who had been on the way to the hearing the minute she'd heard her kids had been arrested, but it obviously ended before she made it. Since you all haven't been thrown out of the city, she's happy to know that the forum let you all stay, and that she finally gets to meet the Scions of the Seventh Dawn in person. Technically, she's not supposed to be speaking to her kids since they've been disowned, but anybody who grew up with both parents at home know full well that when the dad dishes out a punishment that may be a bit excessive, the mom always loosens up the leash a little bit. Unless the kids have done some really heinous stuff, then they'll probably get in double the trouble. But Améliance is not about to miss the chance to see her kids who barely stopped by even before they got banished. Plus, she has some gifts for them at the house, and they will come and get them. Even people who fight gods know not to test their mother's patience, so the twins don't argue the point. Plus, Ishtola figures it's the perfect time to reconnect with Thancred's group to work on your next course of action. The Warrior of Light's not going to be a part of that meeting though, because once the twins' mom realizes who you are, she wants you to visit her house too. She's not going to keep you all for long because her husband won't be happy if he catches you in his house, so you all head off to their estate. It was always clear that the twins were rich, but seeing how their house is the size of a college campus complete with an army of servants proves that they have the kind of money that rich people dream about. Améliance tells the servants to not tell Fortunato about this unscheduled visit and sends them off to get the twins' gift, which leaves you alone with her. The twins have been writing her letters telling her bits and pieces about their adventures, but she's pretty sure they left out all of the moments where they nearly died, just to keep her from worrying. She couldn't help them in any real way, so she did the only thing that she could, and that was send the Scions money. Her family clearly won't miss it, since I'm pretty sure I already mentioned the fact that they're really rich. After the twins met you, every single letter they sent talked about you a whole lot, so while the twins may hide it, they fanboy over you just as much as G'raha does. Améliance is happy that her kids have someone like you watching their backs, and since you have a few minutes to wait around, she wants you to tell her about some of the things you've all done together. Améliance's gift turns out to be a brand new set of clothing for the twins, one that Alice is happy to see doesn't actually match, because dressing them exactly the same was always a terrible idea. Améliance had one little bit of extra gear for Alphino that she stole from his father, the very cool and overly difficult to use weapons of a sage. Turns out while Fortuno spends most of his time doing paperwork now, back in his days as a student he spent a lot of time in the field blowing stuff up and healing people with the flying weapons. They work well in combat once you learn how to use them, and since Alphino will definitely end up fighting someone again in the future, his mother figured he should take the things, not to mention the fact that they cost a whole lot of money and using them as wall mounts was a waste. Before you all leave, she has one more thing to tell you. While Fortuno seems to be super focused on his mission, he didn't get like that until the day the twins were born, so while Améliance doesn't know what the form is doing either, she's pretty sure the reason her husband is so focused on it is because of his children. Lastly, trying to win a battle of words with Fortuno is like trying to outlive Larry Wills, so if Alphino wants to get his dad to change his mind, then he has to prove that he's worth listening to by doing something extraordinary. It's good advice, so after telling their mother bye, you all leave the mansion to go and meet up with the others. When the two groups compare notes, Kral thinks that the best way to use your time is to attack the Tower of Zot. Since there's nothing you can really do in Sharlayan, that's as good a plan as any. Y'shtola figures that she can try to figure out the whole connection between the Ethereal Sea and the Forum by sending a letter to Matoya before you all head off to Thavnir. From what Fordola and Arnval said about their trip into the tower, they weren't able to free the Amon-Jah who were trapped in it, and when they tried, the defenses kicked in and Lunar Ifrit showed up. The extra protection doesn't make sense when you think about it. Just pulling people out of the tower kills them, so if there was no way to free them, why waste ether keeping people from trying? That probably means that there is a way to save the people that are trapped without killing them. The towers were made by magic, so there has to be something inside keeping them there. So that means if you find it and break it, the tower should vanish, and everyone will hopefully be freed. The problem is if you kill the primals inside, the people bound to the tower will be forced to summon another one, which won't exactly be good for them. So the Scions decide to divide up their forces. The people who know how to heal will keep the captives alive, while the rest of you look for the core and cut down anything that tries to stop you. So with the plan set, the Scions head to Thavnir to finally take down one of the towers. The trip to Thavnir is great for those of you who've been there, but the rest of the Scions have to go through that very unpleasant bit of nausea and vomiting that the Warrior of Light, Urianger, and Thancred had dealt with on your first trip over there, so it takes them a bit of time to get fully ready to head to the Tower of Zot. Varshan shows up to both introduce himself to the rest of the Scions and to express his gratitude for the fact that you're about to try to get rid of the tower that's been making things unpleasant for his people. He has enough warning scales for all of you, so now the Warrior of Light can finally have some backup in the fight with the primals. Since there are no more preparations to be made, you all head into the Tower of Zot. The tower is not a place that anyone would book for a vacation spot, probably because it's filled with tempered Garleans and monsters that are trying to kill you. As soon as the Scions start their attack, primals in the form of the Hannish goddesses are summoned, and you're forced to fight all three of the Mega Sisters before you can figure out how to shut down the tower. With the primals taken care of, Y'shtola can see that the ether that the tower is bringing in is heading to a single spot. That's obviously the core, but the thing is absorbing way more ether than it needs to keep itself running. Y'shtola studies it to find out why, and she realizes that there's something very strange inside of the thing. A man's body part. That's extremely creepy. So instead of trying to figure out why it's there, Y'shtola tells Estinian to do what he does best and destroy the thing. He does it, and the tower begins to dissolve, which causes the Scions and every one of the Arcosodara that are trapped there to fall to what would have been certain death, but G'raha pulls off some top tier magic to save you all. Due to the fact that he doesn't have access to the Crystal Tower, that type of spell knocks him unconscious. With everyone saved, that leads to the next problem. All of the former prisoners are tempered, and they'll need to be fixed. Something that Alice thinks she can do, but with there being so many of them that'll need to be treated, Y'shtola thinks that getting more Porxies and mages to help will speed up the process. Varshan and his people saw the tower disappear and they came over to find out what happened, so you all get them caught up on the situation. Now that he knows what you did and what you need, he's more than happy to use his resources to help get the now freed prisoners back on their feet. Alice and Y'shtola go with them to the city to help lead the detempering process, and once G'raha's back on his feet, the rest of you head to the city too. Since the tower is gone, the city of Razad Han is finally open to travelers. As confusing as it is trying to make your way through the place, they could have just left the gates open and it still would have been a hard place to attack. Once you and Estinian wander around a bit, you finally find your way to where the Scions are meeting in Vritra's room. That's where he gives you a proper thank you for dealing with the tower. A part of that thank you is enough warding scales to hopefully equip enough soldiers with what they need to handle the rest of the towers. After everything that Alphino saw happen between mortals and dragons, he can't understand why Vritra would suffer through having his scales torn off to help people, or even why he's living around them at all. The truth is, while he knew that his kind were fighting mortals, he'd seen simple people who showed him respect and smiled at him when he gave them advice. So he couldn't bring himself to hate all mortals despite the fact that Nidhogg's anger wasn't misplaced. He had just hoped that his brother's fight never bled over into his lands. Since he's kind of old, Y'shtola decides to ask the dragon if he knows anything about the final days. While he's old, he's not that old. The source had already been sundered when his father brought his children there after they fled the Dragon Star. And all he knows of what happened before was whatever Hydaelyn told him, which we all know that she's not exactly talkative when it comes to giving you useful information. So the only way you'll find out what the final days are will be if Hydaelyn tells you. Since waiting around for the goddess to give you hints won't help you stop Fandaniel or the towers, you all head off to collect your warding scales and move on. But before you go, Vritra finally realizes that you're the hero that his father actually had respect for and was willing to burn through his power to save from Omega. While he's happy to actually meet this famed adventurer, he thinks there's way too much responsibility put on your shoulders. And with you being the center of so many cataclysmic events, it's very likely that everyone near you will not have a long or easy life. So before you leave, he tells you to take care of your friends, because the war ahead is going to be hard for all of you. When you go to collect the warding scales, it turns out that there are quite a few more than the Scions expected. There's enough to equip an entire company of soldiers, which, considering how little time the alchemist had to make the things, is really impressive. There's actually enough of the things for you all to do something a little bit reckless, and that's skip attacking each individual tower and go straight to Garlemald to hit the Telophoroi at their home base. Granted, you'll have to run that plan by the Alliance leaders before you just run off and invade a foreign nation. So the Scions split up so they can go let the leaders from Ul'dah to Dalmasca know what they're planning, while the rest of you get the talismans back to Sharlayan. Before you all leave, Nadana shows up wanting to find the Scion who cured her of the tower's corruption. Since the big elephant woman had only been locked up for a short time, it wasn't all that hard for Alisay to fix her up. Nadana wanted to thank her and the rest of you for saving Thavnir, but since her people were the ones who gave you all the means of saving everyone, it was clearly a group effort. For reasons that you don't know, the Elpis flower starts to change colors, and once you explain to Nadana what the thing is, she starts to wonder if it's affected by something called Akasa. None of the Scions have ever heard of this before, but it's a Hannish term to describe an energy source that's linked to feelings and completely separate from ether, although most people outside of Thavnir think they're one and the same. Ether exists in all physical things, while this Akasa is a part of the intangible side of things, and as far as Nadana and the alchemists know, it can't be controlled. The only things that seem to affect it are strong spiritual emotions. People who do battle a lot usually experience it in random moments in the form of boosts of power that seem to be beyond what their bodies are normally capable of, something like those flashy limit breaks that you can only pull off in a group. Being someone who wants to know everything about everything, Y'shtola is really interested in learning about this mysterious power source, since its very existence opens up a whole lot of questions about what people thought they knew about ether. But since the Hannish alchemists can't exactly perform experiments with the stuff, they don't have a lot of information about it. Since they can't exactly help you learn anything more about the weird flower either, you all head off to handle your separate tasks and keep things moving. When you get back to Sharlayan with the talismans, all you can do is wait for Thancred and the others to get back from their talks with the Alliance leaders, so you finally get a moment to rest, which makes Alisay, Alphinaud, Kral, and G'raha think it's a perfect time to bring dinner to your rooms. It's a very relaxing and normal get-together that the Scions rarely get to have, since they're always busy doing important stuff. One of their topics of conversation is of course that strange flower, and how it changed when the people around it got hopeful after your victory. That successful mission made G'raha feel better about what you're all doing, but between the Forum and the Telophoroi, there's still a whole lot left for you all to figure out. But knowing that doesn't interfere with the meal, or make the Scions leave your room any faster, which also makes the flower change colors again. While you're all relaxing in Sharlayan, Fandaniel is letting Xenos know about how you destroyed the tower in Thavnir. That one victory won't really impact their plans all that much, but if the Scions attack Garlemald directly, that could make things a little rough. Since Xenos knows you quite well, he's pretty sure that you'll be coming straight to him soon, so Fandaniel plans on getting everything ready to give you a not so warm welcome, since you seem to be the only thing that Xenos cares about. That's true, since he finds everything else to be boring, but Xenos has noticed that Fandaniel doesn't seem all that interested in the mission either. The Ascian situation is a little different. As a mortal, he was constantly having dreams about bits and pieces of the past, similar to how Xenos always dreamed about the final days. And now he's very close to letting the entire world see his dream, which probably won't be good for anyone. The next day, Kral decides to take a bit of time to go and talk to Montashain to thank him for keeping you all from getting kicked out of the city. He had tried to come talk to you all after the hearing, but you had all left for your tower raid. Since you're all still waiting for the others to get back anyway, it's a perfect time to take a trip to the Studium. The Studium is pretty much what you'd get if all the greatest schools on the planet fused into one place. In other words, it's a really good school and it's Alphino's favorite place since he's a nerd. He was the youngest person ever accepted, graduated at the top of his class in magic and etherology, and was probably the person who got his head dunked in the toilet the most, likely by his sister. Alice was a good student, but nowhere near as good as her brother. Regardless, they were both famous enough for everyone to know them, which means their current adventures and their current status in Charlian will probably be the talk of the school, so Alice hopes that their reception will be at least a little bit better than it was at the last stand. Since there's no way to know for sure until you all get there, you head into the school to see if the twins are in for another not-so-friendly welcome. The first thing you all do when you get to the Studium is split up to hunt for Monteshane. People like him are always busy, so he's not exactly easy to track down. And since all of the people of the Studium are more busy than not, even the ones who have seen the man can't say whether or not he's still in the same place that they last saw him. The twins aren't really able to help that much with the hunt since the students have heard about their adventures, which has made them even more famous. So their conversations with people lead them to talking more about what they've done than getting information. Fortunately, it doesn't take too long for the Warrior of Light to find her target, and by the time you do, the twins and Crow show up. The main reason Monteshane had helped you all during the hearing was because he's one of those people who believe that curious people should be allowed to explore and learn. A majority of the forum feels the same way, which is why he was really able to help. Since he wanted to talk to the grandchildren of two of his dead friends, that being Galif and Louisoix, he would have worked to get your exile overturned if you had been kicked out of the city. Since he knows the twins in Ishtola, the old man is surprised that you haven't pushed them all into a bottomless pit a long time ago, since they're all likely to get you into trouble with their lack of self-preservation skills. The man clearly doesn't realize that the Warrior of Light is more likely to get everyone around her killed long before any of the other Scions drag you into nonsense. Since you all have a chance to talk to a friendly forum member, Alphino asks Monteshane what this secret mission of theirs is. The man has been sworn to secrecy though, and it's not just his refusal to break his word that keeps him from talking. He physically can't say anything. Their mission is so important that if any word of it got out to the general public, it will cause widespread panic. So everyone who knows about the mission has a spell put on them that makes them unable to talk about the mission without the forum's permission. Alice didn't even think a spell like that was possible. So Monteshane gets to do the one thing he enjoys more than anything else, and that's teach a lesson. He's very long-winded like most professors, but the long and short of it is the forum broke their rule about manipulating people's memories to make their members unable to talk about the mission. They don't mess with the minds of the general public, but whenever a new member joins the forum, they put him or her through the procedure to make sure they don't blab by accident. The spell can be removed, but only if 9/10 of the forum agree to it. Otherwise, their memories are bound and won't unlock until they die, which doesn't matter all that much since they'll be dead. What this little lesson does prove is that interrogating forum members will be a waste of time. However, Monteshane is willing to help you all in any way that he can. Since that little errand is done, you all head back to the annex to wait for the others to show up. While the Warrior of Light was hanging around the Studium, G'raha had heard from the other Scions. The people they talked to were happy to hear about the warding scales, and now the Grand Company of Eorzea and the Eastern Alliance are getting ready to meet up and figure out what their next move will be. They also want you all to bring the warding scales to Limsa Lominsa, so you pack the things up and get ready to head off. Crow decides to stay behind in Charlian. Since she's the leader of your group in the city, if she heads off and starts chatting with the leaders of other nations, the forum might get irritated since they already don't trust any of you. So she thinks it's for the best if she just waits for more news to come from the other Scions. So minus Crow, but adding Estinian to the group since he made it back while you were all in the Studium, you all head off to Limsa Lominsa where Nanamo, Connie Senna, and Merleweb are all waiting for you. They've all been dealing with the towers that popped up in their areas, but what they're doing is just a delaying tactic. Eventually they'll be overrun. They all know that they'll have to do something drastic to survive this, and the warding scales that the Scions have are pretty much the key to their plan. While you were in Charlian, the different nations were fighting in different areas, but since more and more members of the different beast tribes have been being snatched up, there have been more and more primals showing up, which is making it harder for the individual nations to hold off their enemies. So they've decided to take their best fighters from each nation and send them all to attack Garlemald itself. This group will be called the Ilzabard Contingent. It'll have two jobs. The first is to help the people of Garlemald. A large number of their soldiers have been tempered, which is why they're working for the Telophoroi in the first place. So since they're victims of your common enemy, in some ways that makes them potential allies. Plus Nanamo just thinks helping them is the right thing to do. She's not forgiving the Garleans for what they've done over the years, but she wants to show that the Eorzean Alliance has better morals than the Garleans do. They really don't, if you want to be honest. All of their individual nations have done some pretty crappy things over the years, both to their allies and to people they considered inferior, or people who were just in their way. So just because they found religion in the last few days doesn't mean there's somehow some paragon of justice and morality, but that's a topic for another day. The second objective is dealing with the giant tower that Thancred and Urianger saw in Garlemald. No one knows what it's for, but a bigger version of the things that are giving you all so much trouble is definitely bad. Since the smaller towers affect the currents of ether, a bigger tower would have a far more wide-reaching impact. The smaller towers drain more ether than they need to, and the others are starting to think that those towers may be sending the extra ether to the bigger one. That means the Telophoroi are storing up massive amounts of ether for something that would probably be very deadly to all of you, which means you need to stop it. Obviously, they want the Scions to join the Ilzabar contingent and help them out on this mission. Y'shtola, Thancred, and Urianger have already agreed to join up, and they're heading off to meet up with the others. They figured it was a given that you and the rest of the Scions would be joining up too, so they didn't see any point in waiting around for you. All you have to do is bring the warding scales with you to Alamigo, where Rauban and Americ are getting things organized. After that, it'll be time to invade Garlemald. Neither Rauban nor Americ will be leading the contingent though. They're just getting everyone organized before they get back to their other duties, namely keeping their people from rioting, since they know that the contingent's not being sent to slaughter every Garlean that they find. Even Gaius is helping get things set up for your mission, but he won't be coming with you either. Since he's been accused of murdering the Emperor of Garlemald and starting the Civil War, it would look kind of odd if he showed up trying to save the people. People would start to think that he's trying to set himself up as the new Emperor, which would honestly be the most logical progression for his story arc, and the best way to change Garlemald for the better. But adding another faction to the struggle for the throne wouldn't help deal with the Telophoroi, so it's better that he stay put for now. Instead of Gaius, Maximo will be the one to guide you through his frozen homeland, you and the very large group of quite familiar faces who have gathered in the Alamigan Royal Palace. Pretty much everyone you've worked with while studying the different jobs is there, minus the one person who really should have been. That being Sharon Tia, the man who trained both you and Alice in red magic. She even mentions him during the meeting, so the fact that he's not there hopefully means that Square Enix has something planned for him in the future. But for now, he's one of the few people who is not under the command of Lucia, who's in charge of the contingent. To show how seriously everyone is taking the assault, Connie Senna sent her brother to lead the Conjurers of Gridania as the support arm of the squad, as well as some of the twin adders that you'll know if you did the Bard quest, and their job is to keep the healers from getting holes poked in them. Sicard from the Bloody Executioners is leading the forces from Limsa Lominsa. Ul'dah sent the slightly insane Thaumaturge brothers, Pippin and Lys herself. Ishgard sent the Temple Knights along with an assortment of machinists, so all of that along with the assortment of regular no-name cannon fodder soldiers gives the Ilzabar contingent enough people to make a dent in whatever they come across. Granted, Amanalane is there too, so he deducts a few points from what your group will be able to do. The Domans were supposed to have sent over some shinobi, but they're being used to get messages back and forth from the eastern nations, so instead of the ninjas, all of the different Zayla tribes from the Azem Steppe, as well as the members of the Dalmascan resistance are there. The contingent is made up of a lot of people who have good reason to hate Garlemald, but that hatred doesn't extend to every Garlean, since by now most of the people have made friends with a few of them. One of these Garleans, that being Cid, is providing ships that will take you all over the mountains to get you into the outskirts of Garlemald, but from there you'll have to go on foot to avoid getting shot down. The terrain is flat and covered in ice, meaning you'll all be spotted pretty easily, so it's going to be a hard fight from the minute you set down. That means it's time to grab every supply that you can and get ready to invade Garlemald. Once everyone in the attack force has been given their own warding scale, it is officially time to head off to Garlemald after Tataru gives you all some much needed warm clothing. She's not coming with you because no sane person wants to go anywhere that's that cold, but she will hang out in Sharlayan to keep Krog company while trying to find a way to make money, because that will always be her main priority. With that last bit of side business dealt with, you all hop on an airship and make your way to Garlemald. You all make it to the landing site without a problem, but Thancred, while doing some scouting, comes across a large number of very well-armed soldiers that are being led by Virgilia, the legatus of the 3rd Legion. There are also members of the 1st Legion working with them too. That wouldn't be all that odd except for the fact that the 3rd Legion followed Nerva during the Civil War, while the 1st didn't. These two legions were pretty much the main forces behind the Civil War, so for them to be working together, they have to be tempered. If the plan was just to off everyone, then charging in would be a viable, if a bit risky, way to go. But since the plan is to save as many Garleans as you can while limiting the risk to your own troops, Lucia wants to thin the enemy ranks as much as possible before the head-on attacks can start. And the best person to come up with the more stealthy plans is definitely Thancred. Him and some of the other scouts have already snuck into a supply depot that's full of Magitech weapons and armor. When Lucia gives them all the signal, Thancred and his team will destroy the supplies, which will both remove some weapons that were definitely going to be used to try and kill you all, as well as draw some people to investigate. That'll help thin out the main forces a bit. Once they get fully ready to make their move, Lucia plans on splitting the forces into 2 groups, so she can have people ready to attack while keeping a rear guard to keep you all from getting flanked. She wants the Scions to play the role of floating assistant, meaning you all will be running around the battlefield helping out wherever you're needed. It's a simple plan, which is always the best kind, so you all get started. Instead of going in with this full team, Thancred decides to sabotage the supply depot on his own, because of course he does, and combining his rogue skills with his gunbreaker job, something that we really should be able to do on our own, he does exactly what he needs to, meaning he sets up enough explosives to make a very big distraction. With his part done, the rest of the Ilzabard contingent and the Scions of the Seventh Dawn get a move on. You're all immediately attacked, so you all have to prove that you really are each nation's deadliest warriors. The Garleans are pretty relentless with their attack, and since all it will take to leave your entire force dead in the water is to wipe out your supply carriages, the battle is even more difficult than it could have been. That little fact has the Scions working twice as hard, especially since they are trying to put down the enemy without killing them, something that is extremely difficult for Estinian since he fights with a spear that's the size of a very tall person. When Vergilia joins the battle herself, that makes things even more difficult, but since the Scions have a literal godslayer in their ranks, that keeps things from getting too far out of hand. The Ilzabard contingent proves that it really is as good as it was supposed to be, by taking down everyone who attacked you and taking the ones who didn't die captive. That gives you all a clear path to Garlemald's capital. Your very large crew comes across a checkpoint that leads straight to the capital, but instead of running into another fight, the place is completely abandoned. Maxima remembers the place being constantly used by everyone from merchants to common folk, so seeing it empty is kind of creepy, especially since a place like that being deserted could very well mean that the people who had been there have all been tempered. Figuring out where everyone went is important, but before that you all need to set up some kind of base camp, since talking outside is a good way to freeze to death. Fortunately, the buildings being vacant makes setting up shop pretty simple, so after naming your new settlement Camp Broken Glass, you all dig in and get ready to plan your next move. The Imperial Palace is close enough for you all to attack, but before you charge in, you'll need to find out what's happened to the city. That way you'll know exactly what the Telophoroi are planning. A few of the soldiers you captured are people that Maxima knows personally, so once they've been cured of tempering, they'll be a reliable source of information about what led to the fall of the capital. The ether of the area isn't really sitting all that well with Ishtola, so instead of exploring, she decides to work on detempering duty instead of Alisei. Sicard will get some people to deal with the only slightly less important task of getting the heaters up and running, while the rest of you get the lay of the land and set up some defenses. The Telophoroi likely know that you're all there, so it won't be long before someone attacks you. Thancred, Urianger, and Estinian have all been to Garlemald before, so they'll take charge of scouting the area. While they handle that, Lucia wants the Warrior of Light and the twins to search the area called the Evelyn Rime and see if they can find any survivors. Now that you all have your orders, you set off to start exploring Garlemald. Alisei, after using her extensive detective skills, realizes something that no one learned before her, that Garlemald is really cold. So cold, in fact, that any survivors who are wandering around outside of shelter for too long would be on a one-way trip to the upper room, so it'll be for the best if you all get your hunt on the way as soon as possible. Amanda Lane, one of the most useless people in the contingent, thinks that he knows the perfect spot to start searching, and since he does carry around a telescope, Alisei decides to humor him. He does manage to catch sight of a Garlean girl that's running away from something. The good news is running across snow leaves a lot of footprints, so after grabbing a few warming potions from the Ellison, who is seriously trying to undo his status as useless, the Warrior of Light and the twins head off after the fleeing woman. When you catch up to the Garlean, she is not even remotely interested in talking to Eorzeans. She blames your people for the current state of Garlemald, and no matter how much Alisei tries to convince her that none of your people had anything to do with their current predicament, since none of you are even sure what happened in the first place, she still doesn't trust you. She does finally tell you all her name once you mention the Telophoroi and their tempered troops. She's Licinia, and she honestly has no idea how she didn't end up tempered like most of the other people. She remembers hearing a loud roar, a lot of screaming, then everything got eerily quiet. She had thought the fighting had stopped, so she stepped outside where she saw hundreds of people just staring at the sky like mindless drones. Others had gone insane and started fighting the soldiers. She didn't want to get caught up in all of that, so she ran away. The place she's been staying in with a few others who didn't get their minds taken over is called Victor Spoils, and it used to be a mansion for retired soldiers. Now it's being used as a safe house. Unfortunately, their supplies are running out. Lucky for her, the Ilsabard contingent does really plan on helping, so she goes to let the others know that they may not end up starving to death after all. There aren't many of them, but even though they're desperate and starving, they aren't willing to let strange foreigners inside of their home. So if you want to help out, you'll have to do it outside. The twins are okay with that, but it's still pretty clear regardless of what you do, Licinia still doesn't trust you. Most of the refugees are pretty sick, which makes it hard for them to travel to a warmer location, so Licinia wants you to try to get them back healthy. Alphino gets to work on that while the Warrior of Light passes out those warming potions that Amanalaine gave to you. While you're doing that, you see a radio sitting on the table that is constantly playing Garlemald's national anthem. Usually the people use them to listen to the messages that are being sent out across the Empire, but since the capital fell, all that's been playing over and over again is the music. The song was made to remember the soldiers who died trying to retake Locusamonis, the homeland that the Garleans had been forced out of generations ago. And it was meant to remind the people that no matter how hard things got, they would eventually get better. Some of the refugees think that the song is Varys' way of telling his people that he's still alive. They think he faked this murder because he knew things were about to get bad in the nation, and he needed to leave to find a way to save his people. I guess people will make up all kinds of nonsense to give themselves hope, because that theory is very thin. Licinia had figured out that you're a part of the group staying in Camp Broken Glass, and the people that you fought must be Vergilia's troops, since she had seen them marching in your direction a few days ago. She didn't know how you and your soldiers entered the nation, but when she finds out that you flew in on airships, she starts to get an idea. You don't get to hear about it because someone inside of the building who she's clearly trying to hide from the foreigner starts to talk. The Garlean woman pretends like the sound was just an animal that may have wandered into the building, then starts to ramble on about how the wild beasts have been attacking the people since the soldiers are off doing who knows what. The monsters make wandering around dangerous for the non-fighting folks, but since you're clearly a capable warrior, she figures it won't be hard for you to travel to the tappers near the frozen lake. Tappers are people who gather ceruleum, which powers all of the Garlean equipment, including the heaters. Licinia tried to get them to share their fuel, but they won't trade it for anything other than food, which her group doesn't have any to spare. Her group only needs enough of it to last until they're healthy enough to go to your camp, so you agree to go and see if you can convince the tappers to share a little bit of their fuel. The tappers are violently against the idea of talking to you at first, so you're forced to knock a bit of sense into their guards. After that, Alice shows up. Licinia had told her to come with you just in case you needed some backup, which is unlikely, but it's not like an extra pair of hands aren't useful, so the two of you go to have a chat with the leader of these tappers, a Hrothgar named Jarek. The idea of Eorzeans coming to save Garleans is stupid to him, since it seems like a perfect opportunity to wipe them out. None of the tappers are actually Garleans. They were all taken from their homelands and either forced to mine ceruleum or tricked into it under the guise of earning a better life. Needless to say, they're not exactly loyal subjects of the Empire. Regardless, they're not going to tell you the secrets of mining ceruleum from the frozen lakes, because a smart businessman never tells how he does what he does. They have more than enough of the stuff to run their heaters, but since they can't eat it, they need to find someone who's willing to trade it for food, which, considering how the Ilsabard contingent brought plenty, they may be in luck. Either way, it's not like they can go home. Even if they somehow made it out of Garlemald, the only skill they have is mining ceruleum, so they are well and truly stuck no matter what happens to the Empire. Jarek is surprised that the pureblood Garleans were willing to ask foreigners for help, but since Licinia has a little sister, likely the person she was trying to hide from you, that makes sense. And since he's not totally heartless, Jarek is willing to give the two of you a bottle of fuel, so you take it and head back to Licinia to try and find out why she felt the need to hide her sister from you. When the Warrior of Light and Alice get back to Victor's spoils, it's pretty clear that something is wrong. The place is too quiet, and Alphino is nowhere to be seen. You find him behind a building, injured, with 3 Garleans who are doing way worse than he is. They had asked him to help carry some supplies, which he did because he was being his usual helpful self. But when they got behind the building, they attacked him. That didn't end well for them. One of the men survived the beating that Alphino gave them, and he thinks that they were right to attack him because it's clear that the savage Eorzeans are just there to take advantage of the Garleans' currently weakened condition. Considering all their nation has done to enslave other people, believing that their enemies are suddenly there to help them in their hour of need is a hard pill to swallow. Alphino tries to convince the Garlean that they really are there to help, but Alice thinks that'll have to wait for later. She found some empty medicine bottles and a warm bed that someone only recently got out of, which has her thinking that what Jarek said about Licinia having a sick sister is true, and the two of them have run off. The other Garleans help them get away without the Scions seeing them to keep them safe from you and yours. Even though they likely won't survive out there in the frozen wastes alone, It's better for them to die free than to suffer whatever fate your people have in store for them. I'm not one to force my help on anyone who doesn't want it, but the twins and the Warrior of Light are not like that, so they race off to try and find the sisters before something bad happens to them. You all find both sisters, but they're already very dead, all because they were more scared of you and your magic than the beasts that roam the area. Not wanting to leave the two girls' bodies out there to become food for some wild animal, the twins bring them back to Victor's spoils and buries them before heading back to Lucia to tell her what happened. They think that's the best course of action since sticking around and talking to the Garleans is only making things worse. When you tell Lucia what happened, she decides that it may be for the best if you all change the way you deal with the surviving Garleans. That way you may avoid triggering their fight or flight response. Maxima decides to go to Victor's spoils himself to see if the refugees respond a little better to one of their own offering help. They should have had a Garlean in their group in the first place, but better late than never. While your group was out scaring people to death, Istola and the other healers cured some of the tempered soldiers, and they were willing to share information just like Maxima said they'd be. When Varus was killed, Nerva declared himself the new emperor, which led to other factions going against him, especially the First Legion, who was still loyal to Varus. Even though they were at war, none of the factions liked the idea of turning the capital into a battleground, since the winner wouldn't exactly have a throne left to sit on, but something took over their minds and made them do exactly that. The nation was never as stable as the Eorzeans had thought. Even back during the assault on the Gimlet Dark, Nerva and his dad Titus, who had wanted Varus' position, had taken advantage of the fact that Xenos had been taken over by Elidibus to try and remove them from their position of power. Their plan hadn't worked because a lot of Titus's supporters suddenly died under suspicious circumstances. Those mysterious circumstances likely came from the Ascian making them disappear, since there was no evidence that Varus had anything to do with it personally. Titus and Nerva assumed that Varus was wiping out his political enemies, so they started getting their own counterattack ready. The perfect opportunity came when Xenos committed patricide and Gaius got blamed. They claimed the Emperor's seat, so the First Legion accused them of murdering the Emperor and the war broke out. Wars take money and resources, but the odd thing is both groups were being funded by the same family, House Brutus, which is led by Asahi, who is actually Fandaniel. He got the Garleans to fight each other, then one night after the fighting started, a massive earthquake shook the whole capital, and after that, the only thing any of the soldiers remember is Varus talking to them in their dreams, saying that the Tower of Babel stands as a testament to the glory of Garlemald. The soldiers thinking that Varus was talking to them matches with the refugees thinking that they were hearing the Emperor through the radio, which Alphinaud had taken with him when you all left Victor's spoils. The strange thing is, the ether coming off of the radio matches the ether of your warding scales, which would explain why some people escape being tempered. Istola is pretty sure that the earthquake that the soldiers felt was a wave of ether from a primal that tempered everyone except for those who were huddled around the radios. While she's breaking down her theory, Serena comes running in to let you know that a Garlean soldier who didn't seem to be tempered just got caught trying to steal some of your supplies. Since it's a perfect opportunity to get more information, you all head out to question this soldier. His name is Julius, and he's not happy to see that Garleans are working with the enemies of his people. Lucia lets him know that you're not there to invade the nation but to help them deal with their current situation. Of course, he doesn't believe her. She does confuse him a bit when she offers to give him the supplies that he needs, but he doesn't plan on negotiating with any of you since he's sure that his commander will deal with you all. If you want to talk to his commander, Julius is willing to take 3 of you to meet him. That sounds like a bad idea, so naturally the twins want to take on the role of representatives and walk right into the enemy's camp to talk. The incident with Licinia is bothering them, and they figure that this is a good opportunity to prove that they really are there to help. It's a better opportunity to get themselves killed, so the Warrior of Light decides to tag along with them and march right into the heart of a Garlean army. And that's where we're going to stop for the day. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like it, comment, share it, and subscribe. Donate to the channel if you can, and I'll see you all next time.